All right. Hello, everyone. My name is Chelsea A. Flowers, and I want to say welcome and thank you all for being here with us today during our virtual roundtable discussion on reflections and ritualism. Um, let's see. I wanted to start off just by introducing myself. My name is Chelsea A. Flowers. I'm an assistant curator at the Carr Center. And I just want to share a bit about the Carr Center. It is a multidisciplinary art space that works to uplift, to educate, and to inspire, and really to present and to really once again highlight the perspectives of Black, African American, and people of the African diaspora. And just want to share the structure of our roundtable discussion today is that I'm first going to introduce Laura, who will then introduce four really amazing artists that are part of the virtual exhibition that is in our Carr Virtual Center. And this exhibition will be up until March 13th. So I highly encourage y'all, if you haven't had a chance to already, to go in and to engage with the exhibition. It's very, very lovely. I'm very happy, proud, and excited about the exhibition. So to get us started, I'm going to share a little bit of Laura D. Gibson's bio. And so Laura D. Gibson is a visual and lens-based media artist and independent curator in the city of Detroit. She received her Bachelor of Arts in 2013 in Art History and Anthropology at Grand Valley State University and is a graduate from Cranbrook Academy of Art with a Master of Fine Arts in Photography. As a native Detroiter, her work focuses on familial ties to the city in relation to memory, storytelling, space, displacement, and the archive. Gibson uses video, audio, and performance to dissect the ways of maneuvering the city as a native Detroiter and a woman of color while documenting and examining the notions of intimacy and reflecting on space and the idea of home. That's so lovely, so great. I'm so excited to introduce Laura D. Gibson. Also, very quickly, I want to share that during their conversation, it'll be about 30 or 40 minutes. You'll have a chance, if you want to engage in the conversation, you'll have a chance to ask your own questions during the Q&A. But with that being said, here is Laura D. Gibson. Great. Hi,
Thank
Laura.
you,
Take
Chelsea.
it. Right,
Hi. Really, really appreciate that introduction. Thank you again. And thank you to the Carr Center for allowing me to come in and create a really wonderful exhibition and working with some amazing artists here in the city of Detroit. It was such a pleasure to get them involved, showcase their work, and now I have the pleasure of talking with them to discuss their individual pieces in the exhibition. So again, the exhibition is entitled A Way of Escape, Reflection on Ritualism. And so we're talking about particularly these four artists, their ways of maneuvering space, dissecting ways of reflecting on ritualism in their own individual practice, specifically during the time of this pandemic and this ever-changing world, and getting to know what they're working on now and how it's probably being diverted, and examining how to dissect and divert from traditional, Western traditional styles of ritualism, and how using the lens uh, assists them in creating some of the work and how they're actually working right now. So again, it was such a pleasure working with the Carr Center and working with these artists. And now I get the chance to introduce them to you all. So I'm going to start off with the participating artist, Ricky Weaver, who is the image-based artist here in the Metro Detroit area, coming from Ypsilanti, Michigan, where her work is associated with understanding the image. She was also an Applebaum fellow with the Carr Center not too long ago. We also have Bree Gant, who is a multidisciplinary artist and documentarian here in the city of Detroit, who focuses on ritualism and mental health. Morgan Bouldes, another participating artist who is a conceptual visual artist and writer and storyteller here in the city of Detroit, and current Cranbrook student who is completing her master's in fine arts and photography. And then lastly, we have Quinn Alexandria Hunter, who is a multidisciplinary artist, actually coming from North Carolina, who's now based in the city of Detroit. So I just want to welcome all of you and thank you again for sharing time and space with me and participating in this exhibition. So I guess my first question is just, how is everyone? How is your mind? How is your body? How are you maintaining and functioning right now? What's going on with you?
Who
I'll
wants
play
this?
popcorn. I'll start with Morgan. How about you?
Okay, fine. Honestly, my mom, she passed away March 1st, 4 years ago. And so I'm just in the middle of processing that and going through the motions. It's officially time for my family to handle her ashes. And so we'll be doing that together as a family by hand. And so I'm looking forward to that. But it's just something to wrap my mind around. But ultimately, I'm good. God is good. I have peace. It's just, it's a part of life. Yeah. Do I choose someone or?
Sure.
Quinn.
I'm doing okay today. It's a beautiful day outside in Detroit. All our snow is melting. The sun is just lifting my energy, so I'm good. How about Ricky?
I'm doing really good. It's my daughter's birthday. She's turning 11, so running around doing stuff, baking a cake right now. The sun is out. Super grateful for that. Erykah Badu turned 50 today, and that's amazing. So I'm in a good mood. Super happy to be here and with y'all. Y'all all look beautiful, and I'm excited.
Good.
Beautiful, Ricky.
We may have lost Bree for a moment. So while we're trying to get them back, I want to just start off, just like expressing my thoughts while I was producing, this show. And, I was specifically thinking there is no way of escape. The times that we are in, the predicaments that we're in, the experiences that we are facing, there is no way to fully leave this space. And then ideas of utopia, just somewhat out of reach. But then again, is there a way to develop that within the spirit and then manifesting in the physical? So as we search for that in your work and in your practice specifically, does it reflect creating a spiritual or even physical escape? Or even in the works that you created, is it a manifestation of that escape? Anyone can start off with the answer.
So I'll start. Escape is something that I think about a lot. While you were talking, I was just thinking about escape as like a practice that is like parallel to like freedom as a practice. Because like if you didn't believe that you could be free or that you were free, the what would be the point of escaping? Where are you escaping to? Like I heard this podcast, I can't think about it, but I think about what the name of it was. But Alexis Pauline Gumbs was talking about how Harriet Tubman believed in her freedom more than the structures that were incompatible with her freedom. So like as a lens-based artist, an image-based artist, just thinking about the language that we create, the way that archive literally builds our reality. I imagine that like I'm creating worlds or access to worlds that don't require escape. So like when I'm making the work, I'm just like, we out. Like this is it. Like this is a wrap here. Like where are we going? So I would say that that's how my work, specifically this work, relates to ideas of escape.
Morgan, what about you?
No. So with my background, I follow fear God and follow Jesus is what I say, but I was raised in like a strict Pentecostal, upbringing. And so African spiritualism it's demonized and it's you're taught to be afraid of it. And so through my own journey and developing within my own faith practices, I had to dissect from what I knew and was taught to be mine, and had to find God for myself. And so definitely the ritual that I performed in my film, of course it's film, so there's like a performative era to it, but at the same time, it was me being baptized again, but then bringing in my ancestors, you know. I was raised to not speak to dead people, you know, not consult with the spirits. There's like this extra element of fear behind it, and it's really pushing back against that, and really transcending to the next level, to get in touch with yourself, to get in touch with the divine. And through that, it is an escape. It's an escape from things that have acted as chains for years, and truly finding an understanding and a personal relationship with the divine. And I could say that's what it was for me.
Thank you. Ms. Hunter, thoughts of escape, has it crossed your mind?
I guess for me, I think a lot about escape as part of the work and sort of the answer to the work. But for me, the work itself really manifests the place that we're escaping from, particularly Wade in the Water. It's sort of this leans really into ritualism and baptism, particularly in the sort of African American Baptist church that I was raised in, and sort of that sort of dip into the water and rising out, sort of purified or cleaned in a way. But within that video, that sort of never happens. And it's sort of this metaphor that it's never happened, particularly for the sort of African American diaspora population of the United States and really broadly throughout the world. And so for me, I think about escape a lot within my work, but the escape doesn't happen because it hasn't happened yet.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and to agree and also share the same experience, again, coming from a Christian background. I have learned and still learning to dissect and even re-research, things that can contribute to my overall health, and trying to figure out certain ways to respect and pay homage to where I've come from and what I've developed and learned, but also adding upon what new ways and aspects of like learning, as I develop and mature, spiritually. So yes, absolutely. So finding time, to create your work, I'm pretty sure was difficult. And now on top of that, we have, this type of isolation, which may be good for maybe creatives and working artists, but then again, it's somewhat difficult. So all of you, how do you practice focusing to complete the pieces that were shown, that, any of your past or even recent work? What are some of the things that you practice to maintain the focus and, a full process and completion of any of the work that you're focusing on right now? Ricky, you can go ahead.
This past year or so, integrating my practice into my life and understanding these things as one thing has been like a challenge, but becoming this really beautiful thing. While I was making this work, I was having a conversation with, so for context, I was in Puerto Rico when I was making this work, and I was with two of my really close friends that I actually met during the Independent Scholar Fellowship with the Carr Center, Andrew Wilson and Victor Gibbons, and another friend. And we were having conversations about how scale has changed. And one of the things that was on my spirit and has remained on my spirit is that, living is the scale, and just being in practice and like thinking about like ritual, my daily ritual, making work as ritual, conversations communion with friends, like these things as the practice and the work as like artifact of that, has really helped me to make time for the work, because as a couple, like Laura and Morgan, you were talking about this, Quinn, I don't know if you said something about this as well, but like I was raised as a Baptist. I went to church a lot, and so I'm parsing through like the things that I'm learning and how I understand them. But I feel convicted. Like when there's a piece on my spirit, I literally will like get sick or so, like until I just get up and make the work and get it out of me. So it feels like a very spiritual experience. It's like, it's not an option. Like through COVID, I've been like, I'm not doing this art stuff no more. It's hard. Like I just, I just want to take care of my kids and come home from work and be off of work, and not just be always sitting in this work, but integrating it with my daily life and really listening to what's on my spirit has changed the way that like I understand time around making work, and also just knowing that like it's not an option for me not to make the work.
Well, I just want to say, like, whatever rituals or practices you're using to do your makeup, because your fate is beat to perfection. So I just want to let you know that. Thank you. Morgan, how about you?
Yeah, speaking from my experience as like a full-time student for the past 20 years, making work, it's been difficult to balance, making work for critique, but then making work for yourself, and then trying to find yourself in the middle of that, of those two journeys. And I think as I'm ending my educational career for now, I've definitely been able to look back and reflect on the things that have spiked interest in me to make work, or that have moved me to make work. And I think in the beginning, it was, and when I say beginning, I mean years ago, like maybe before undergrad, it was to try to tell a story to myself, of myself, to understand myself. But then that progresses to documenting and keeping track of time. When you face death and you face it up close, you want to capture everything. And then it becomes about, once you have an experience with death, you start to realize the importance of documenting, and you realize that we live in a truly a non-permanent world where things are constantly shifting, and we're constantly going up and down and in and out, and things live and they die. And so what do you do with that? Where do you find the value in your day-to-day life? And for me, it's by record keeping. It's by taking pictures of everything. It's by writing every day. It's really documenting my own life. But for certain projects and certain ideas, like all of last semester, my ideas came to me in the middle of the night by praying and meditating. It would just come to me. I would ask God for it. I began to like remove the separation between my faith and my practice, and then everything started to line up for me way more. But getting an idea or getting a starting point for a new project, it feels like, I don't know if this is going to sound so crazy, but it's so real. It feels like giving birth in a way. And I haven't had any children. It's almost like I've just been impregnated with all of these ideas, and it can almost feel orgasmic in a way, but it's how you know that there's something behind this. There's a purpose behind this. It's going to impact yourself, but it's.
No, I definitely can understand that metaphor. Many great things in relation to, yes, even birthing something is painful. So absolutely. So Quinn, how about you? Can anything you would like to contribute in terms of your practicing of focus?
Yeah. I'm going to be completely honest. The pandemic has really slowed down my practice in a lot of ways. I graduated at the beginning of the pandemic from my MFA program and very quickly had to move out of an apartment into a different state, actually this being Detroit. And so my practice stopped. And so I've just been using the time to do research. My practice is really heavily research-based. And I find it incredibly meditative to sort of sift through archives and sift through parts of the internet and find things that have been either lost or erased to time. And so for me, I'm starting a new body of work that's actually based on some history here in Detroit, and I'm really looking forward to it. But it's definitely something that I wouldn't have come to without the pandemic being in place. So it feels like the pandemic is influencing me, and I'm grateful for the time that I've had to do this research. Well, I'm grateful to be able to use this time to do research. I definitely want the pandemic to end. 500,000 is a large number.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I also share the same experience, Quinn, of graduating during the pandemic and the trauma that it ensued of, feeling like you can't celebrate your completion and, the ending of something that was strenuous and long. But then again, I also needed to touch and feel. I had moved back home with my parents, so I also was able to sift through a lot of photo albums and put my hands to work in some kind of capacity. So yeah, I'm hoping as well that this can end soon and everyone still stay healthy and safe for sure. Unfortunately, we lost Bree Gant, but we are doing our best to try if we can work out any technical issues and bring them back on the stream, because we would love for them to participate in some way and capacity. But we will keep everyone updated on that for sure. So to continue with the questioning for our artists, as we all kind of discussed, we've felt a lot of emotions during this time. Me specifically, from joy to depression to trauma, all these things, have been brought up for me during our time of quarantine. And, I would say, in instance, for you all in your pieces in the show, you had moments of tension that needed to be addressed. So for all of you, can you all talk about where you were and the specific experiences that you were facing when you drafted these particular works? Where was your headspace at? Where did you physically want to be? Where were you spiritually, at that time?
I think for me, with both of my pieces that are in the show, I was in a place that I wanted to manifest all of these things that I was feeling, and sort of all of these sort of tensions, but also really the world just coming to bear on your body and not having anyone to sort of really talk to or hear about it. And so the only way that I could really do that was to sort of express these sort of feelings sort of in these performances. So the first performance is of my own body and sort of feeling physically tied down to sort of the foundations of the history of this country, and sort of really feeling that at that moment when I was in an institution, being a higher education, and really having to sort of continuously combat with faculty members the sort of validity of the work that I was making. And so, and then the second piece, Wade in the Water, the gentleman that is in that piece is a close friend of mine, who I actually was just talking to last night. And, for him to sort of volunteer to do that piece, to really sort of talk about the sort of really liminal space that we sort of exist in this country, particularly like the physical struggle of like maintaining the sort of happy, sort of not go lucky, but sort of like continuing to sort of persevere and push through everyday life while everything is happening to you to the point where you just break. And so for me, these sort of pieces became this sort of manifestation of my breaking point in a lot of ways.
Thank you. Morgan, how about you?
Yeah, thinking back to when the idea finally came to me, it was midsummer through the pandemic. We were in the middle of quarantine, and I had to move out of my apartment. I lived in a loft that was once an old coat factory, furniture factory, and the building caught a bed bug infestation in the middle of the pandemic, and so I had to move, and that was for like the 15th time in my life, and I was just feeling so displaced and so lost. But I'm like, okay, God got me. Like everything's moving. Like I haven't been stationary in one location in years. Like I said, that was like the 15th time I've had to move in my life, and so I ended up with my grandparents, and I hadn't been to that house since I was a kid. But when I walked in, it smelled the same, it looked the same, everything was exactly the same. I slept in the same room, and I hadn't really, like I said, I hadn't seen my grandparents in years, and so now I'm coming back to them, and they're so they themselves are home, you know. And I called the film "The House That Withstood the Fire" to represent that house itself, but also myself, me being a temple, this body being a temple. But then I actually did have a house fire when I was younger. And so it's just like this idea of finding home and being displaced, and that home being a living archive, and it's still available and it's still at reach. And it was it's a journey. It's still a journey finding home, because now I live at Cranbrook. And so just it's just that's just life. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you. How about you, Ricky?
What Morgan was saying about home resonates with me so much. And this work kind of happened in two separate times and places. And one of the things I was thinking about when I physically photographed the work was technologies of home, and how we are able to take that with us, and how we're able to take that with us. It was one of those moments where I go into the Airbnb and there's this like cabinet of beautiful glasses, and I'm like, beautiful vessels. Okay. And somewhere in my mind, vessels for holding water, a practice. Water was something that I was thinking about, needing to be in physical like relationship with the Atlantic at this specific time. Because I got a phone call and it was just like, we have work to do in Puerto Rico. And I'm like, okay, like something in me just had to, it was like, yes, you're supposed to be there. And the trip was, everything about it was like that. I found this hymn book, which is photographed in the work, Hymnos de Gloria, which translates to hymns of glory. And I had previously done a work called From Glory to Glory. And I was thinking about, it was just like, it was in alignment. So alignment was something that I was thinking about, like when this work happened. And I was like, I don't know if I'm here to like actually be making work in that sense, where, because I didn't have my tripod. I didn't have like a lot of things that I need to make work, the quality of work that I want to make. Like, it said that photographers are control freaks. I think it's kind of true. So like, I didn't have all my things.
Right.
It was really strange. But as soon as like these like materials started to surface, it was just like, you have to make this work. And I was like, this isn't my kitchen. Like I work in the kitchen. I make my work in the kitchen, but this is, and then living in that space and practicing certain daily rituals in this space, it began to feel like home. And I felt the permission to shoot in this space. So let me like rotate back to the question of like what I was feeling and whatnot. So that was the intuitive decision to make that work with the after experiences that I had like while on that trip. So for example, thinking about water, in search of water, somehow ended up at this waterfall, which I got it like tatted in Puerto Rico. It was like a nice. The river of the Holy Spirit, and just ended up there and just feeling and aligned with all of these things. And so then I opened the book, which on the inside of the book, it's like sitting right over there. I should go grab it, but I'm being whatever. So I opened the book and it has 183 written on it. And I can't think of how to say it in Spanish, but the song is about holy water. And it was written there because I took the book. I had to take it. So I brought it home and it was there. And so, thinking about things like how Archive does like evade our daily what is the word? Surveillance. Like, like I got this message and nobody knows, nobody knows about it. And so that was the first part of the work. And then the second part of the work, I was just like, I didn't have all my things. And this isn't like how I would have done it. I didn't have my tripod. The leveling's not right. And like all of these very like, all of these like thoughts were trying to like get in the way of this work. But then my hard drives crashed, like all this stuff happened to the point where I only had access to this work. And I felt like that was the spirit being like, no, you gonna make this work. This is the work it's showing. This is at this point, this is the only work that you have access to. You don't even have a choice. So, and that's what I mean about like feeling convicted and like all these things when I'm trying to get something done. A lot of times, like, I feel like it's not just me making this decision, and I try to be obedient to what is on my spirit.
Yes, all the key words is like water, fire, home, like especially water. Like that was pertinent in a lot of you all's work, and I wish we had more time to dive a little bit deeper because I would love to, because like it's like a sense of like rites of passage, a rebirthing, birth by fire. It's a whole new renewal process that we can probably touch on a little bit, maybe in the Q&A if anybody throws in any questions from the audience. But as we get close to the Q&A, close to 10 minutes, I do just want to talk about, you all just being, Black women in STEM, lens artists, photographers, documentarians, you maneuver the lens in like various spaces, even probably outside of the city of Detroit. And maneuvering through space as a Black person can be somewhat difficult, as we've seen specifically in 2020, just demanding our rights to be and be in a specific place, just to be here. So as photographers and documentarians, can you just describe how the lens just creates awareness and access to what would have just been inaccessible years ago that even still is somewhat inconceivable to many right now? And anybody can jump in on that question. Feel free.
Having a camera around my neck has got me in places I wouldn't usually be able to go, or gotten me out of trouble. One time I guess I'll just answer this by telling a story. Like one time in undergrad, I needed to get in the middle of the freeway. And so I got the 4x5, and what the 4x5 did to get under the hood and everything. And so I'm in the middle of the freeway. I have all the settings right. And then 22 pulls up on me. And, he's like, "What are you doing?" And I'm like, "I'm a student and I have to do this." I try to put my soft voice on, but it's me and two other Black people in the car. And we're like in Plymouth, That's Livonia area. I was taking a picture of the route that me and my brother would take to the hospital to go see my mom every day. And, he's like, I'll give you 2 seconds. And I pressed that shot. I had 2 seconds to get the shot. I went back and developed it, and it came out perfectly. So, I mean, I love having a camera present. It almost, for some reason, people look at you with more respect than maybe they would otherwise. I'm not sure. But yeah.
Yeah. And what about awareness too? Like, I know the camera brings out so much of what we never see.
Definitely. It works as like an extension. I don't know how anyone else feels like that, but it's like an extension of your own eye, and what catches your eye and what is brought to your attention, being able to have that control over it and choose to present and being able to tell the story. It's so much. There's so much I could talk about photography. That's a whole separate, that's so separate, but I'm gonna pass it now.
I like where Morgan ended on, talking about us. We need to be able to tell our own stories. Thinking about photography, like the history of photography as a medium, it's typically thought of, this is my perspective, as a formal medium, very scientific in the beginning, and I think, yes, we need to be able to tell our own stories, and for me, because I think we are in control of our own realities. So I'm always starting within, and the relationship that I've gained with the lens has helped me to understand how I negotiate space. So me being the photographer and the director and the person in the scene at one time really helps me to understand, as Black women specifically, I started thinking about all the many hats we wear and how we do need to be in several places at one time, and maneuvering. That Laura used that word, and I think maneuvering is a word that I think about a lot with my practice, because I'm literally let me run over here and press the button, and then I'm gonna run back over here, and then I gotta pose real quick. That's it's so important to have that experience, because somebody was like, why don't you just have somebody help you? But when someone's there, it becomes more of a performance than, it actually is. So I get to be in control of how much I want to give and how much I want to withhold. And so that negotiating and maneuvering as a practice is really important to me. And then to be able to sit with these images is really is really important for me. It was something that I was going to say. I lost my thought, but for the most part, yeah, that's it. Oh, wait, I remember.
Okay.
Time. That's the only thing that I wanted to add. Photography and having multiples in one image really allows my brain through because I think that for me, I prioritize visual learning. So for me to be able to see myself in multiple places at one time is sorry, that's my dog. But for me to be able to see myself in several places at one time lets me know wow, Odie, come here. So it allows me to understand the access that I have to the past, present, and future, and to be in more than one place at one time, and to have access and get free. I'm going to mute myself and let you go to the next person.
Okay. Thank you, Ricky. Quinn, how about you?
I guess for me, I guess I'm primarily a performance artist. So for me, the camera sort of exists in this way that I grew up with the sort of phrase like pics or it didn't happen. So for me, photography lends itself to sort of this sort of documentation of an act that happened, and proof that it happened. And it really makes me think about sort of the idea of who had access to photography, and particularly who got photos taken of them and who didn't, and sort of the space that those that didn't have those sort of documentations of their lives sort of existing. And so for me, performing and having sort of the documentation of sort of the mundane of those performances is really important. And that particularly performing for lens gives me a certain amount of control and a certain amount of distance, and it enables to me to do things that I just wouldn't do in front of an audience. And particularly, there's a performance I think it's in the show, felt performances of Black femininity, and there's absolutely no way that I would do some of the things that I do in for the lens that I would do for other people. And it's sort of, photography allows me to sort of break myself into sort of different personas, and split myself in different ways that you just can't really do without having the lens there to help that fracturing. So for me, I think about and use the lens as a way to split myself into sort of different acts of performance.
Mm-hmm. So everything of what you all have been saying really just sounds like it's encompassing control of your narrative, control of your story, who was behind the camera. And I can say and declare that was me. And this is a true and honest reflection of, you know, what I've created and who I want to show it to. Like, also, who do we give access to our creations? And like all of us being students once before, it was all open for critique for everyone to have access to and kind of dissect. So I feel like that's still another conversation on its own, but it's really great to know that being lens-based artists, you know, we can say that, yes, I had creative control of this piece and this is my narrative to share. So again, thank you all for contributing to the roundtable. And I would love to open it up, you know, to questions from our audience, whoever is viewing, to give us, you know, their thoughts and their input.
Sorry. Okay. Hi. I want to say yes. I just wanted to reiterate that was such an amazing chat. Lovely. And for anyone who missed my face earlier, hello. Hi. My name is Chelsea A. Flowers, and I'm the assistant curator of the Carr Center, and just had the pleasure to work with Laura and all these wonderful artists for the show. And I just figure, like, I'll start the Q&A, and then also, once again, highly inviting in. Would love to hear people's questions, comments, praise. Feel free to drop it in the chat. But my first question for y'all is, so this is like a millennial question. So this is for the millennials here. Do y'all think you'd all be in the Water Nation with regards to Avatar: The Last Airbender? Would you all be part of the Water Nation?
Oh,
Yes.
damn.
Yes.
Yes.
I
Okay.
always saw myself as an earthbender, but I'll slide in the water.
All right. I mean, this confirms kind of something that I'd had. So thank you for that. So water, a dash of earth in there. But my first actual question, it was really great to hear kind of like the making, the processes of our other three artists. But I have a question for you, Laura, as a curator. So reflections on ritualism, it's like a really interesting concept like that you share in your curator statement, like how it's like a biblical reference. And so like in the show, we get a taste of like how the artists, or a pretty big taste of how the artists like kind of reflect this concept. And so Laura, I'm really curious like how you as a curator, also being a creative yourself, like reflect on these ideas or methodology of ritualism. If you could share some of that with us, I'd highly appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you for the question. So as I mentioned before, growing up in a Christian background, Baptist specifically, um, I'm immersed in scripture, and even in my adult life, I try to incorporate, more than ever right now. But I can definitely say it's been somewhat difficult, you know, relying on something that I cannot see, that I cannot feel, is somewhat kind of inconceivable for me right now to, and I can't leave this space that I may be going through, like either in terms of feelings, during a pandemic, so I was heavily just reflecting on what are the practices and methods that I need to incorporate in these times right now, that surpasses either what I have been taught or any new methods that I have been learning or need to incorporate, just in my daily life. And so, just thinking about that, as a creative, is it to make? Is it to produce? Is it to collaborate? Is it to reach out to people, have conversations? So all these things are kind of like in my mind, in what I was feeling and thinking. And, I kind of just do what I did do best, and that was just to create a show, pulling in artists who I know create work that reflects around ritualism, kind of as a way for therapy for me. Because I can definitely say watching their work was therapeutic. It was a way of feeling, of leaving, of escaping any current, feelings of, depression or anxiety that I may have been feeling. And I know that any of the work that the artists were probably making prior or within the work that they presented, they were probably experiencing that same thing. And I would hope that they felt, you know, a way of self-care in creating their work. And it's something that I'm still, because my routines shift all the time. So just thinking about how I can escape through the many things that I do, either as a creator, a curator, an artist, just how do we really, really escape? Are we truly leaving, and are we truly maturing spiritually, and diverting our traditional thoughts, traditional ways that probably have hindered us? So
Great, thank you. I see that. All right, I've got more questions, but I'll ask later. We've got a question from Amber B. Hi, Amber. Thank you for your question. And so Amber just asks, what are rituals that you perform in your daily life, and how do you define ritual? Amber shares that I recently did a paper on an artist and the theme of ritual and found that I use the term loosely. So yeah, what are your thoughts? You want to share this idea about ritual in your daily lives? I'll open the floor to anyone who'd like to answer.
I guess for me, I define ritual as something that I do periodically that brings me comfort, that I find sort of solace and almost meditation in. Like I do a nightly ritual that I do a skincare routine. And for me, that sort of prepares me from like washing off all of the stresses of the day, in order to sort of enter that space of like restorative sleep. So for me, I define that as a ritual that I do every day, because it's for myself and it's not for anyone else, and it sort of prepares me for another step.
yeah, and just to go off on that, like I mentioned before, my ritual I kind of go define as routine as well, and I found comfort in knowing that my routine changes. Everything can't work for me that worked even a few months ago versus now. So I would probably encourage you to have solace in knowing that routines and rituals can change. As anything that provides you help in healthy routines and regimens, I believe is ritual.
Definitely, I'll agree with you on how rituals change. I define a ritual, at least personal ritual, as something that's just innately me, and that's something that just sits so still and so calmly with me, to help transition me through whatever moment or whatever feeling I'm feeling at that moment. cooking is a ritual for me, like taking my time and preparing a meal, or, having a moment with myself to write. And like you said, it doesn't, I'm not a monotonous person, so I don't do anything, every day. But, when the feeling is right, there's that one or two things that you do that just settle you. So.
Mm-hmm. Ricky, I think you're muted.
Yeah, you're muted, Ricky.
All right. Am I good? Good.
Mm-hmm.
I agree with everything that you guys have said about rituals so far. Cooking is what I thought of first. The one thing that I'll add is ritual for me allows me to feel a specific connection, whether it's with self or something else. So my grandmother's birthday, my grandmother who passed away, the grandmother that I'm always talking about, Audrey Weaver. I made a peach cobbler recently, and that was a ritual for me to just I felt really close to my grandmother while doing it, and like not using a recipe but relying on her to be like, that's too much of such and such, so yeah, I love the way that you guys talk about rituals. Beautiful, and I agree with that.
Yeah, that's all great. Oh my God, I like connect and agree and just love all of that. Love cooking, skincare. Yes, love feeling grounded. So our next question is from Erin Falker. Hi, Erin. Erin says, where do the picturing of the ritual and then the ritual of picturing intersect for each of you? And when does it, wow, words, sorry. And how do you mark that movement? Do you want me to reread that for y'all? Because I was very choppy.
You're good. I'm good.
Okay.
Yeah.
Feel free to jump in at any time.
I'll just say, and this is me just like trying to think through this question with y'all. And I feel like the two are like, for me, really related, because oftentimes I'm imaging my own ritual, so like, I'll say this, like for me, I'm thinking about like vernacular, like what rituals do need to be pictured and shared, and then also who will understand, so I think that for me, how I'm able to code the picturing of ritual and share that is also means that I have to really understand thoroughly what I'm doing before I picture it and share it. So it's a deepening of an understanding, and like that Morgan said it could be orgasmic, the making of the work, and like birthing that baby. So I feel that's it.
Yeah. I think basically off what you were saying, Ricky, I think I share the same of like, I'm in constant thought, and I have like such a vast imagination of how I think something can be produced, but then when reflected in the project, it may not be thoroughly what I saw, but it may be even better. And that moment where I do get this kind of like excitement of like marking it, like I'm immediately to pen and paper. Like I kind of like write down keywords, write down what I'm feeling, write down my thoughts. Like I believe that's maybe what the question is about, marking it, and being an image-based like worker. It's kind of like I see where I was, when I first started off, and it may not reflect fully of what I saw, but it kind of created its own space in the physical that may have somewhat reflected in the imagination and the mind, but it could have been better than what I thought and imagined. And I think just as like photographers and documentarians, we can, I don't know, just be able to like access like a whole new world, like a whole new space of where like our thought and our imagination can go to. So, but for me also, like writing is a true implement of how I think, I mark what I'm feeling and experiencing. So I hope I answered the question as good as I possibly could have.
I think for me, picturing the ritual is birthed from me trying to sort through different feelings or how to depict depict a certain narrative if it's for others' eyes, then how's the best way about going to tell that story and then layering it so that the right people can decode and understand it. And like it almost happens like a visual once all the components come together, or not like a visual, like a vision. And then immediately, because I'm a visual person, but I'm also an audible person. So I talk to myself quite often and record almost everything. And so immediately it's, I see this, that, and the other, and da 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 da. And I have to take audible notes on it because it almost comes very quickly. And if I don't, I feel like if I don't grab it, I'll miss it. I don't know. It's weird. Yeah.
All right. Yeah, lovely, man. Once again, just really enamored with this conversation that we're having. I know time's coming to an end. We've got a few more questions in the chat. This one being mine that I have a question. So yes, my question for y'all is earlier Morgan mentioned this idea about like birthing or like kind of passing and how it's, and so I find that idea to be very interesting. And so also for me, I'm really wondering, like it leads my brain to the idea about like, completion. So I'm really curious, how do you know like when like a project is done or like when like a series is done?
For me, nothing's ever done.
That's real.
Like I'm that deep person. It's an ongoing project. No, I mean it's only because like me personally, not necessarily think it should be perfect, but it's always something more that I feel can be added to, specifically because I do a lot of work that concerns my family. And so that's an ongoing thing, an ongoing line of people, generations, and there's something that could always be missing from the archive that you may have to pull from, storytelling, sitting down with people and talking with them, hearing them out, hearing new perspectives, adding different sounds, adding different movements, different gestures, for me, it's just like never ending. So no, nothing's ever done for me.
I guess I think for me it's, oh, go ahead, Morgan.
No, you didn't answer the last question. So
I guess for me, for a project is done when it's just enough to get sort of the original concept that I was sort of wrapping around my head. I tend to overcomplicate things. And so for me, I tend to sort of censor myself to the point where like, okay, that's just enough for that project. And I can take whatever I want to like throw on top, the sauce or whatever, to the next project or meal.
For me, I'll say that just like Laura, it builds off of the next thing, and I'm realizing that about my work and how I go about practicing art making. Everything is all connected. Like I'm realizing things that I worked on years ago, that stories being finished this year or just adding to it, and so all together, by the time I die, it'll just be one continuous project, and that's the work. So
yeah, it all feels like and that was said to me by my mentor, and it's all we're continuously unpacking the same box. For me, it's like when the title comes, because I'll wait for that title, thinking about like giving birth, literally like it's pressure. Labor is pressure. And once I don't feel that pressure anymore and I know the baby's out, I might nurse it a little bit longer, looking at it. What do you need? Are you good? And then like, so when I name the baby, I'm like, okay, like you're ready to go out in the world. You know who you are, and you can function.
That's yeah, once again, just so lovely. Yeah, this idea about completion or kind of never really being complete. I know we're kind of low on time. I just want to share that I also had the pleasure of talking with this artist who was sharing that like she's like a painter and she actually acquired a studio. And so she's constantly just kind of like reusing the materials that are in her studio. And so she'll know that she's done with something once like her studio is completely empty. And she's had this space for, I want to say like 10 years and it's still nowhere near being empty. Like it's like once her studio's done, once she's used everything, then she'll like retire from being an artist. But yes, I just wanted to add that 2 cents, this idea about completion, but also how it's so like cyclical and whatnot. So I know another comment popped in the chat. I see we have another comment by Amber. And so Amber says, Amber B once again says, do any of you do altar work as a ritual / ancestral connections? How does this positivity impact your work?
Morgan, I feel like your video was pure altar work.
Oh man. Yes. I definitely have done that before, and I was thinking about it. First thing that came to mind is over here in my room. I have something like a shrine or an altar for my mother. It's just like with dried flowers and live plants and her picture, and that just happened. That wasn't planned. It just happened. So I'm like thinking about ritual and ancestral connection outside of work, because my life is my work, and so how they mash together and how they come together. But in my film, I definitely had several altars, and then I did an altar. I had a performance with an altar piece that I stood on my first year of grad school. I could take up all the time with this question, so I'm going to pass it. Yes, sure.
I just want to say that I laughed because I was like, I'm about to get in trouble. Because, like I said, like I'm from a very Christian family, and like whatever. That was me having an internal conversation. But to answer that, I keep a photograph of my grandma on deck. Like I keep a photograph of my grandma. I'm gonna pour her some water. I made her a peach cobbler on her birthday. Like that conversation, that connection to art, like that is within our bodies, our blood memory, to say, scientifically, epigenetically, that's the quickest resource to get to our ancestors. So I think it's important to keep those memories, those relationships alive and visible, because like I need to encounter that on a daily. Like I need myself to be reminded of that, and I think it's important to honor that and pay homage and be respectful to the. I ain't making this work by myself, you know what I mean? Like it's a collective, so I think it's important to really like respect that and spend some of your time and energy on that.
Yeah, same for me. In my recent work, my last work that I did in grad school was all about reflecting on those who passed and acknowledging their presence here on this earth in the city of Detroit where their home stood. And so my altar was just recreating their images, next to their homes now that are vacant. I made sure that they were acknowledged, that they were here. So that's kind of the list that I come specifically to them, my ancestors, my grandfather, my great grandmother, who I unfortunately didn't know, but who I pay homage to and show appreciation for. So the image is kind of like my altar, recreating them and respecting them through the image.
Interesting. And then Quinn, did you want to answer this question, or have you answered? Did I? No pressure.
I guess no. I mean, I guess for me, I guess I don't necessarily work with altars unless the body is an altar, which I don't know. It's a big question. I like to think that it is, but I haven't really thought about it.
Yeah, I mean, that's a really interesting concept, this idea about the body being an altar. I am highly intrigued by that. We can talk about it offline. But I just wanted to address, and so this will be the actual final question. Thank you all for such a wonderful, thought-provoking questions. But our last question is going to come from Katrina. And so basically, they say that like ritual is such a powerful word, and that it's been said so many times during this talk. But the question is, what public rituals could expand the art world? And it's a big question.
Well, for me, protest was a giant ritual that changed everything, especially the art world. There was a lot of changes within the city of Detroit that we saw, institutional-wise, individually. So protest to me was definitely that act, that formation, that congregation of people coming together as one to make change. So for me, I think we should show much more respect for protest as it has changed and will continue to change so many things that we may not see or take advantage of. So for sure.
Yes, yeah, I love that. Aaron, Morgan, or Ricky, if you wanted to share any thoughts.
Go ahead.
Just super short, was going to say that I think that's an interesting question. I haven't thought about it much, but thinking about I think place is very, very specific to rituals, like where they happen. So just like really thinking about and unpacking where art is happening and how those spaces kind of like set the tone for what is able to happen. So I think we should see more art, more places, and engage with it in different ways, because also access and all those things, like I think we should be thinking about, yes, to the rituals and where they should be happening as well.
My thought process is centered around that same thing, thinking about the ritual of, a white wall gallery opening where they're happening on a Friday night. People get dressed up. There's cheap wine, and that's just like, that's what it is, But then also thinking about access and how to expand the art world, you have to take art out of the context as being something reserved for the privileged and those who, of certain economical backgrounds, and expanding art. A cloud in the sky is art, and that thought process removes those barriers for me. That's a big one. That's a big one. Yeah. I'm gonna think about that. I like that question.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, I love having questions to kind of walk away with. So thank you. Well, I want to say thank you all so much. This was such a lovely conversation. Yes.
So it's sad to not have Bree on board. We truly appreciate them attempting to come and share their thoughts and their ideas. But those who haven't seen the show, please feel free to visit. Take in the work. It's at the Carr Virtual Center.org to see all the participating artists in their work. So thank you again on behalf of me for coming and seeing us.
Yes. Thank you all. Thank you all so much. Enjoy the rest of your day. Stay safe.
Bye, you all.
Good day. Good day.